Well, hello investors and traders. I'm LA Little and this is your daily NeoTA wrap, where we take a look at these markets and we do it from a neoclassical perspective. Each time we're asking ourselves, what happened today? What does it tell us about the coming days? We do a show 4 times a week, every Monday through Thursday. It's broadcast at or before 10 o'clock Eastern Time. It's archived on YouTube and it's under the channel LA Little. If you haven't subscribed, reach up in the right hand corner and hit the subscription button. You'll get content notification each time it's pushed. I also do a show on the weekends. On Sunday evening, we do a weekly wrap. We spread the view a little bit, look a little bit farther out in time, and analyze it from that perspective. As you know, I've been doing this for 2.5, 3 years. The format will change at some point here, but for right now, it's still free, still easy, and still informative. As far as what is going on, let's take a look at the markets. Today you had the big bounce. Last night it was so negative. I remember when I was preparing for the show, I was looking at things and I was thinking to myself, it's like the best thing this market's got going forward is everybody hates it now. It is so negative, so stretched. Those kinds of moves, when you get them, where it's just day after day after day of bludgeoning. At some point they get a rally and they get a big one. And that was today. And I actually started positioning for it. Told members yesterday I was going to do that right at the end of the day almost. And started positioning for what I thought would be a turn. That turn started to take place this morning, actually overnight. A little bit of a gap up this morning. They sold that down, so you still had the opportunity to get in. And then it gave you a couple of small chances intraday. Now, these rallies don't have to last, right? They can come right back. We're going to look at the potential of this one to continue here in a minute. You had the big move on the NDX. The Russell was the laggard today, 1.52% on the NDX, almost 2% on the S&P. Remember, these were down 3 yesterday. The S&P 1.5%, the Dow 1.5% as always. TLT down 1%. Yesterday was up big, so it was an inside day actually there. You had oil pop up again, 3%. I think oil is going to hang here for a little bit, which will give the market a little bit of a reprieve. We'll look at some consequences of that. You actually had the DAX, the CAX down. They made new lows, and they made them on a higher volume. They could trade lower. If you look over in Asia, you actually have some of those markets look like they can bounce some more. And we'll take a quick look at those as well. So that's kind of a wrap. Dollar's just sitting there along with the euro. Not much happening there. So at least from a currency perspective, you're not getting anything that's going to stop this, at least at this particular point in time. And I should say that isn't going to stop the move up or to stop the move back down. I know you can go either way, right? But the currencies aren't playing that role right now. Okay, so let's move over, take a look at the charts here. We'll start with the S&P 500. So when we come to the S&P, and you're going to see this on every index tonight, or almost every index, certainly every index here domestically, also the case in Europe, and that is you get under yesterday's low, back over it, and you have slightly more volume. Now, the volume is not huge in terms of the difference between them, but it is a higher volume. So you don't have good setups here for continuation. Matter of fact, you could come down and test some more. Where could this test back to if it wanted to? I think it could come all the way back to 1900. So S&P under, back over, pushing up. The real meat of this to start with is here, and then it's up at the swing point lows. So you've got a situation here where you've got some resistance overhead. You got a potential with the volume tails to actually come back down some tomorrow, even though it looks to me like you probably have a short-term bottom in for now. Touchy situation, but that's the way it looks here tonight. Now, you're going to see that same situation on each of these charts. If you look at the NASDAQ, the NDX looks almost exactly the same as the NASDAQ, a little bit stronger. And then the Russell, same thing, gets under, back over, and wants to flip, back up some. So I don't see anything here telling us that these markets are going to work higher. If we go overseas and take a look at the overseas markets, you have basically the same situation when you look at them in Europe. And so if I bring up the DAX to start with, you'll see here you get under, you actually stay under, I believe, today. That low was 98.13, 98.10, and you close it at 97.94. So you get under, you go back over. Now the read here could be two ways, right? And I don't like to read it this way, but you actually have more volume. You got underneath it and you tested back into it. But the problem is that the way the setup here on the candle is you started there. So the good thing is it got down here and couldn't stay, right? The bad thing is you couldn't get back over it and hold it, and you've got more volume as you're doing it. So, overall, that says this thing can test lower again in the morning. If we look at the CAX, it's actually set up similarly. It did get back over the lows, but it had more volume. And if I move over and look at the FTSE just around it out, you got the same thing. More volume down there as it went under and back over. So all of those showing the same sort of picture, and that is that they can test lower again tomorrow. If you look at Hong Kong, now Hong Kong got under back over a little less volume. That suggests this one's going to try to rise. And if I look at the Shanghai gets under back over and a little bit more volume. And so this one is the opposite. But again, these volumes are very close on all of them, so I can't put a huge weighting on that. Or in other words, I can't look at that and say, oh, well, it's going to go back down. So we can we need to look elsewhere, and I go to the sectors. So if I look at the biotechs, now the biotechs get under back over and significantly more volume, so that tells me the biotechs can trade back down. If I move over and look at the transports under back over less volume, that suggests that they want to try and move higher. If I come to the semiconductors, same story. And this is going to be interesting because Intel came out with earnings tonight. Intel was down about 5% after hours. Their margins squeezed. They didn't make as much on their margins as they said they would. Actually, they made more, but they didn't make as much as expected. And they got hit after hours back down around $31. Now, if you remember, Intel broke over $30 this past year, and that was the first time he had done that in over a decade, almost two. And so Intel is going to be a big tell in this space tomorrow. The space has been sold down hard. I think this is where you want to be looking tomorrow early to see how it trades. Basic materials, they get under, back over, less volume. Now slightly less volume, but less volume. XLE actually gets more volume coming off the lows after doing the under over the day before. So the XLE actually looks positive, and it was the leader on the way up today. XLF, earnings this morning, JP Morgan. Tomorrow you got Wells Fargo. This under, back over, less volume, that looks like it wants to trade higher. And if we keep going down the group, you got the industrials under and over about the same, technology under over a little bit less. The durables, they got under, back over, and about the same. XLY actually had more, and healthcare as well. So a split here between those that had less volume, those that had more, but mostly it looks as if those in the S&P 500 probably want to carry to the upside, not to the downside, which makes me believe that whatever happens tomorrow, I don't think you're going to go back and visit the lows on the indexes. If we take a look over at the sectors, and not the sectors, but the OX markets, here you can quickly, I just want to point out two things over here. One, high yield bonds. So the high yield bonds come in, get under, they test into this low, 78.21. They get to 78.28, I believe. Yeah, 78.28. So they don't quite test it, but they test the day before. They test the big bar day, all of those, and they flip back over. So this to me looks like it's going to at least pop in here and come back up and start the bearish retest regen off this latest swing point low break. So I would be looking for those to trade back up into that area. If I look at the junk bonds to round them out, You got the same sort of situation. Junk bonds trade down, under, back over, a little less volume. So those being big tells yesterday do not continue down today. Oil, I was saying it can pop up a little bit more. I think this high right here, about 563 on the OIL. On the West Texas Intermediates around 32, about 3170 is where it's going to try and test into. And then bonds I've already mentioned. So overall, as a wrap, as we go into the final day of the week, Monday is an off day. Tomorrow's probably going to be a wild day as a result. You've had huge moves down. You have a setup to do some more trading back to the downside tomorrow, right, if it wants to. I suspect with it being Friday on a long weekend, you're going to see some serious volatility come in tomorrow. Where's it end up? I can't really say that because you got the mixed picture. All I can say is I don't think we're going back to the lows tomorrow. And as negative as I was yesterday on these markets, today, if you go back and look at the S&P or any of the indexes, even though they didn't do a full takeaway bar, they took away about 2/3 of the damage done yesterday. And after a big move to the downside, you really needed something more dramatic on the bullish side to get the shorts to at least stop and think about what they're doing on the short side. And I think today actually provided that. These volumes are fairly close on all the indexes. So I don't think it's a huge negative, but it is a negative, and it suggests to me you're going to see some volatility tomorrow, especially given the setup with the long weekend and a Friday. Folks, I'm going to leave it at that. As always, I thank you for joining me. Tell a friend, tell two. I'm LA. This is and was your daily NeoTA wrap. I'll see you on Sunday night, where we'll pick it up from there and analyze what's coming in the next week. Have a great one. Good night.